Hello there and welcome to my look at issues 59 and 60 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine. In issue 59 we've got a Boom Dacker Snaz Wagon, couldn't wait to get my hands on this. And in issue 60 we've got some Hearthguard, which also look pretty cool and quite excited about painting them as well. Starting with issue 59, of course, it's got a phenomenal cover. I absolutely love orc artwork in these magazines, and this is no exception. The Boom Dacker Snaz Wagon also looks pretty cool as well. We open up, the first thing we're seeing is the how to build section. Will there be a mistake? Spoiler alert, yes, there seems to be every mistake in every single issue now. It is starting to get somewhat annoying. Putting it together is fairly easy to do. Didn't take too long either. Only round about sort of an hour and 15 minutes, maybe an hour and a half. But the end results are fantastic. It does recommend that you build them in subsections, and I recommend that too, as it's a lot easier to paint these subsections separately than it is after you've glued everything together. That is an absolute nightmare when you do that, and I wholly recommend that you follow their instructions. Getting this fantastic model built was, quite frankly, really easy. We've had issues with other things in this issue, as it were. And again, the very first thing you're building is one of the subsections. It's a little grot that will be dangling off the Boom Dacker Snaz Wagon, one of the locations, probably near the back, mostly, or the side, I believe. So he's the first thing that you get built. The second thing you'll be building is another subsection, again with a little grot, this time tied to the front, with his hands thing in his mouth, shut in homage, I'd imagine, to Mad Max. This is the part that's wrong, by the way. It says part 52 on two sections. That's not the part you want. You actually want part 13 instead. Remember, I go through this horrible pain in the backside, so you don't have to struggle there. After that little section, we've built the main body and the main chassis of our Boom Dacker Snaz Wagon. It looks really cool. You would think about sticking the orc in differently to paint easier, but don't stick him in, otherwise it's a nightmare to put in later, along with that little gun as well. Finally, the last bit we're building even, is the last subsection. So there we are. There's the all the subsections that you'll need to put together. You'll notice that I haven't actually put the base on there. I'm going to put that separately after I've painting it. Speaking of which, back in the magazine is the paint guide. Now, you can follow this paint guide if you wish. It is a useful paint guide, but you will get to a certain point and you will not have finished the model. You'll have to come back to it later. I've got tired of doing that. We're sort of 59 issues in, and I want to get all this stuff finished to a standard. Well, it's finished to my usual standard. So I will be putting up a paint guide the following Wednesday after this for you guys to follow if you want to just get your stuff completely finished rather than at the almost finished state. The worst part about this magazine at the moment is getting so close but not actually quite finishing all of these lovely models. So I'm going to be spraying mine up. I'm going to be using matte black spray for most of it, but for the front plate I'm going to be using some sand green red. This way is going to make things a lot quicker and a lot faster to do, as we've already skipped that really boring initial step that they always want you to do by hand undercoating it. Like I said earlier as well, I haven't actually glued anything to the base yet, so I'm just going to slap down some Astrogranite first and then super glue it on later. This model's a very fun model to paint, quite frankly. I had one of my better experiences painting this thing. It's an absolute joy. I can't really sort of blush about it enough, really, or gush, I should say, about it enough. It generally is sort of quite pleasant. It doesn't take too long to paint whatsoever either. In fact, it only took me around about sort of 5-6 hours to paint to completion. And honestly, the longest thing that actually took was waiting for the base to dry with the Astrogranite. But yeah, other than that, I had an absolute blast painting this thing. I hope you have as much fun painting it as I did. And if you want to follow my guide, like I said, that's going to be up on the channel probably the Wednesday after this video goes up. Do remember, though, to paint this thing in its subsections, as it will be impossible to paint the interior and most of the orc that's inside if you don't. This is, as I said, probably my favorite kit we've actually had so far. I absolutely love orcs, and they've been an absolute blast with this whole combat patrol. It's a shame that we've only got the premium left to go. Well, actually, that's a lie. We've also got something special, but you'll find that out later. Moving back to the magazine, we've got a little naming table, which I will make use of, I promise, when I go back to all of this stuff at the very end and start running the campaign. That way I can also use that as a big excuse to add to all these armies and make them grow. Then the next page on that, we've got our data sheet, which of course will have the cardboard version of that we got a few issues back. So following that is scenario 36, the Speed Freak. And I've got to say, I'm quite excited about this. It's a very different scenario than normal. We're actually playing a race. We're using our snaz wagon up against our chaplain on a bike. And the goal is to basically get 3 laps around this track you can currently see on the screen. But we can still shoot each other and attack each other. So I doubt we're actually going to make it to 3 laps. As I said earlier, the rules are a little different in this. We do actually have some extra rules to add along in the movement phase and in the shooting phase as well. The fight phase seems to be pretty much the same. We'll get into these tables while we actually play the scenario. So we need battle mats 1 and 2. We need to get those ready, and with a few of the terrain pieces set up, we are raring to go. So, contestant number 1 is our brand new Boomdacker Snaz wagon, all painted, all finished in all its glory, getting ready to crump some Umis. And that Umi he'll be crumping is our chaplain on a bike. One of my favourite models as well. I have lots of favourite models. I have too many favourite models, but I'm looking forward to seeing how these two fare against each other in battle. For deployment, both units are simply set up 3 inches away from the start line. With both forces set up, and it doesn't indicate that anybody goes first, so we're going to stick with a dice roll. The dice for the orcs rolled a 5, so they'll be going first, as the chaplain rolled a 2. Well, as we've got these tables, these supercharged tables, we might as well give them a whack. We would not be a great orc player if we didn't try to bust the machines as quickly as possible. So the first orc movement table, we roll a die 6. I managed to roll a 6, much to my surprise and delight, which means I actually still get to shoot in the shooting phase, and he'll be going an extra 3 inches. The Boomdacker Snaz wagon moves 12 by itself, so we're going to head straight up in a straight line to get around that first bend, and then we're going to use those additional 3 inches to go around and get ourselves in a slightly different position. Better position? Possibly. Shooting wise, we're going to use the Mech Special that's sitting on the top. It's got a 24-inch range, and it uses 12 attacks, so it's one hell of a cannon. It's also got rapid fire 4 and sustained hits 1. We'll also be getting those extra 4 attacks as the chaplain is within 12. In the shooting phase, we also have another table to roll a die 3 this time, and happily I managed to roll a 6 again. I don't know what's going on with my dice, they're not normally like this. Which means we get +1 to hit, so we need 4s to hit instead of the usual orc 5, meaning I'll be needing to roll some extra dice, so I've only got 12. In total, we managed to get 13 hits off the back, thanks to the sustained fire and the rapid fire. It's not looking good for this chaplain. Once again, it's 4s, as he's toughness 5 and the weapon strength is 5, and that's a lot of damage. I get 1 extra roll, so I should be rolling 13 dice. Unfortunately, that didn't go through. The rest of the 8 attacks did, though, and that's not good. With a -1 armor save, that's 4 wounds straight on to the chaplain before he's even actually really had a chance to do anything. Definitely not looking good for the chaplain. He's only got 1 wound left, so this game isn't going to take too long to play whatsoever. It's a bit of a shame. I was looking forward to it, but you know, is what it is. The dice lay where they lay. The chaplain only has 1 wound left, and well, he's got 12 inches of speed inside him, so he's going to go straight ahead to get into engagement range. He does have a table all of his own, but I don't think I'm going to use that this turn, as I want to get in there and just smash that snaz wagon as much as I can. So he moves ahead 9 inches, leaving himself inside the engagement range. First thing he's going to fire is his twin-linked bolters that are attached to the front of his bike. As ever, he's a Space Marine, so of course he needs 3s to hit. They are the best all-rounders after all. However, the weapon is only strength 4, meaning he'll need a 5 to cause any damage. He hits with only 1 shot as well, but that shot did go through. The Snaz wagon's got a 4-up armor save, but I rolled a 1, so I'm back to my usual terrible dice rolls, it seems. He then used his pistol. Although he managed to cause a hit, he failed to cause any wounds, as he still needed a 4. Next, we're diving straight into combat, and he's going to try and smash this thing with his Kronos Arcanum, but that's when I noticed, because I double-checked, that actually it's going to be the Orcs that attack first, and they're going to be using their spiky wheels. They've got 4 attacks with these, and they need force to hit, and this thing is strength 7, so fingers crossed for the Chaplain. The Orcs only managed to hit with 2 of their attacks, and only 1 managed to actually penetrate the armor. Needing a save of 4 or more, I managed to roll a 1. That's the Chaplain basically gone, as his last wound has been removed. The rules state that you may get 3 laps around to win, but honestly I've got quite a lot to do this episode, because I've got 5 more models to paint and another battle report to do. So I'm going to claim a quick cheating victory for the Orcs there. It is a fun game though, and I will be playing it again later. The next page is the usual victory blurb. I'm not going to read that out right now. I might do sort of, or revisit these scenarios in the future though, and do actual proper battle reports. Then the final splash page is a lovely shot of some absolutely fantastic Orcs. Well, it'd be a shame if I suddenly had one of those to paint. Moving on to issue 60, and we've got our Ernheim Hearthguard. Apologies for the pronunciation. I'm dreadful at pronouncing normal words, let alone actually sort of difficult to spell or annoying words that Games Workshop do. As usual, we've got our how to build section. They're fairly easy to build. They're quite quick too, only rocking in round about an hour and a half, I believe it was. And again, I wasn't really going sort of super fast with that. I was taking my time and just going at a general sort of normal pace. However, once again, and annoyingly so, we're missing numbers on these instruction manuals. So if you're new to this, just look for the closest number that's actually near to it, and then just give it a dry fit to make sure, because otherwise you don't want to glue the wrong bit into place. As I said, they're quite nice and quite fun to stick together. There weren't really any issues, unlike a certain other unit, which I hate. Oh, that's so horrible. It's such a nightmare. Anyway, once the building's done, we're back to the painting. And once again, much like the Boomdecker Snaz Wagon, I will be roughly following what they're doing, but I'm basically going to get these guys to completion. That makes me sound like a massage parlor. And I'm going to make sure they're all done and have a nice little paint guide for you guys to enjoy if you want to follow that. Painting these guys didn't take too long whatsoever, and as I said, there is a paint guide up on the YouTube channel. In fact, they took such little time. They only took around about 4 hours to paint for all 5. The longest part was basically just waiting for the base to dry, really. I had to take a break and sort of do other stuff while that was drying, but again, lots of fun to paint. Really enjoyable, a lot better than the Berserks. But yeah, I had lots of fun painting these guys. Again, paint guides up on the channel if you want to check that out and use that guide to get these guys completed. Be much appreciated. Anyway, back to the magazine. We're looking at the Hernkin and the fact that the Leagues of Votann are somewhat kind of unusual for Warhammer 40,000, as they're more explorers rather than a warfaring race hellbent on destroying everything in the galaxy like so many others. It's an interesting little read. Nice little toilet reads. That's what these things are useful for, to be honest. On the next page is also a nice little toilet read. A short story involving the Leagues of Votann and the Genestealer cult, which we will be seeing very shortly in the pages of these magazines. And by very shortly, I mean literally next video. Next week, we get the Leagues... we get the Genestealer cult. We've already got the Leagues of Votann. Anyway, as my brain melts, we've got the usual naming convention, or this time background convention, for our Hearthguard, and on the opposite page of that is our data sheet, with a little bit of a blurb at the bottom explaining how they work better, but of course we've already got our data card for that. So on to the good stuff. With scenario 37, Hold the Line, this time sees our Leagues of Votann up against the mighty forces of the Tyranids. It's only a small table this time, as we're not using loads of models. Well, I say we're not using loads of models. We are using quite a lot of Tyranids, and the Tyranids will get redeployed throughout the game. Every time a unit gets destroyed, or every time a unit of Termagants get destroyed, they will be coming back on. There's also a nice reminder of how the Barb Gaunt's weapons work as well. So we need just battle map 1 this time, and it's been set up as it is in the magazine. And basically the rules are, we can't let the Tyranids get to objective marker 1. If they contest it, then the Leagues of Votann lose. For the Tyranid side of things, they've got 3 Barbed Gaunts, and with them will be 4 units of 5 Termagants. For the Leagues of Votann, we have a Carl, only 3 of our Hearthguard, and then finally 2 units of 2 Hearthkin Warriors. According to the rules, the Tyranids set up first, and they're setting up in the top left-hand corner. There's also a warning that they're going to be bunched up like sardines, and of course they are indeed bunched up like sardines. The Leagues of Votann are closer to the bottom right corner, near objective marker 1. Of course, there's plenty of space for them to breathe and move. It's a roll-off to see who goes first. The Tyranids scored a 5, and the Leagues of Votann first scored a cock dice, and then, of course, scored a 4. For the Tyranid turn 1, the very first thing that's going to happen is the Termagants are going to move their full 6 inches out of the zone, heading in as many directions as possible, hopefully trying to split up the firepower of the Leagues of Votann and try and sneak around the back to get to objective marker 1. Moving on to the shooting phase, and beginning with the Flesh Borers for the Tyranids. 3 of these units are going to all concentrate their fire on the Carl. Let's try and actually knock him out. So that's 15 shots heading his way. Termagants need 4s to hit, and out of those 15 shots, 10 of those shots managed to get through. Unfortunately, even though they need 4s to wound, they only managed to wound with 4 dice. The Carl has a saving throw of 3+, and he saved with all but 1. 1 wound on the Carl, he's got 3 remaining. The last Termagant unit instead is actually going to fire at some of the Hearthkin Warriors, the ones that are actually closest to the Carl. So that's 5 shots needing 4s, only 2 hit this time as my cursed dice rise their ugly head. Only 1 shot went through, and that one was saved. Lastly, the Barbed Gaunts are going to fire. Now, they roll die 6 attacks for each one that's firing, so that's 3 dice. Hopefully, we're going to get as high as possible. And they're also going to be targeting the Carl as well. We're going to try and knock him out as quickly as we can. Unfortunately, with 7 shots, that's going to be a little bit trickier. What makes things even more trickier, of course, is only rolling 1 hit, which was then promptly saved, even though it did cause a wound. Well, I'm going to say that was a below average turn for the Tyranids. Once again, my dice rolls come and ruin my day. Moving over to the Leagues of Votann turn 1, and, well, let's be honest, these games are always set up to make the latest models look as snazzy as possible. So the Khan is going to move forward 3 inches as he gets 2 inches removed thanks to the Barbed Gaunts. And the Hearthguard are going to move forward their full 5 inches. Hopefully, both the Carl and the Hearthguard will be able to wipe out this entire flank of Tyranids in this turn. Back at home base, both the warrior units are just basically going to have a little shifty around, but remain as close to objective marker 1 without being on it as possible. As the shooting phase begins, we're actually going to start with those warriors. We're also going to fire both units at the same time to save time. Basically, it's a lot quicker when you're doing these things, especially in smaller games. They're going to be using their ion blasters. They need 4s to hit, and these weapons are strength 5, meaning they'll also need 3s to wound. 3 out of the 4 shots hit, but only 2 went through. The Tyranids won't get a save from this, as the AP value is -2. Moving over towards the Carl, he's wanting to head towards those Barbed Gaunts to remove them from the board before they continue to slow everyone down. However, at the moment, he's going to be using his Disintegrator for the Termagants that are in front of him. Hitting 2s to hit, he still managed to miss with 1, but both of those managed to penetrate. Termagants did get a save, but I rolled a Snake Eyes, meaning that's another 2 Termagants removed from the board. Moving over to the Hearthguard, and they're going to be using their Disintegrators as well. They've got the same weapon as the Carl. So once again, it's 3s to hit and 3s to wound because the Tyranids are so weak. Out of 9 shots, 7 managed to strike gold. Only 5 of those actually did any damage though, and 1 surprisingly was saved, taking 4 more termagants from the board. Hearthguard aren't finished yet though, as they also have their grenade launchers to fire too. Now these things, once again, are a die 6 roll to see how many shots we get, and we managed to fire off 9. Out of those 9, 6 hit, and out of those 6, 4 caused some damage. Unfortunately though, there wasn't enough to save the Tyrannid. So that's 1 whole unit wiped out. Carl is then going to charge into the unit that he was facing to see how much damage he can strike in close combat. He rolled 6 inches and managed to get in easily. This time he's going to be using his mass gauntlet. Gets 3 attacks, and there's 3 of those, so hopefully we can score 3, but of course we're going to hit with 2. Both of those 2 managed to cause damage though. They won't get any saves from this, so that's another 2 termagants down. He does get his attacks back though, but he's only got 1 little attack, needing a 4 to hit, followed by a 5 to wound, which he failed. Turn 1 was a pretty successful turn for the Leagues of Votann. Even though it kind of looks bleak for the Tyrannids, they just actually have to get to the objective marker. So their first unit comes back on, ready to kick some Leagues of Votann Tukas. In the movement phase, both units that are closer to the bottom of the map move forward, continue with their flank, and they're going to focus their fire on the warriors to try and get them out of the way. Of course, on the other side, the fresh unit just moves on 6 inches forward, back to where they were to begin with, to be honest. Happy with their positioning and moving over to the shooting phase, we're going to kick things off with the Barbgaunts. They're going to be firing at the Hearthguard. Once again, though, they managed to fire off just 9 shots at the Hearthguard, with only 4 hits as well, and even more annoyingly so, 0 wounds. However, they got hit, so they'll still get their -2 movement in their next phase. Over to the Termagants, we're going to start with those on the flank, firing at the Warriors. We're going to fire all those together as well, so that's 8 shots, and once again, though, history seems to be repeating itself, as we only scored 4 hits, and none of those hits actually caused any wounds. Not letting that annoy me, and then moving over to the other Termagant unit, they're going to fire at the Hearthguard. This time, though, they only scored 1 hit, and you guessed it, that also failed to score any wounds. Can the Termagant in combat fare any better? Well, short answer, no. No, he can't. He did hit, but he failed to wound. And then, of course, thanks to that mass gauntlet, he got his head stoved in by the Khan. But he'll be back in his next phase. Fingers crossed the next Tyrannid turn, the dice rolls won't be so abysmal. Beginning of turn 2 for the Leagues of Votann, they're still in quite a decent position, and those Tyrannids are nowhere near objective marker 1. The only guy who's actually going to be moving is the Carl, and he's heading straight towards those Barbgaunts as he takes his revenge. He's also got his full 5 movement. All the other units are going to remain stationary. So kicking things off with the Warriors, they're going to be firing at the same Termagant unit they were firing at in the last turn. Actually, they're going to fire at the closest one. They hit with 3 out of those shots, but only 1 of those shots actually caused a single wound. No saves means that's 1 Termagant gone. On the other side, the Hearthguard are going to take aim at that fresh Termagant unit to see if they can get rid of those and clear the board from those once again. This time we got 8 hits, and 6 of those managed to cause some wounds, and the entire Termagant unit was wiped off the board. As Arnie would say though, they'll be back. Finally, for the shooting, the Carl is going to use his disintegrator at those Barbgaunts in an act of revenge. He struck gold with all 3 of those shots, but only 2 of them managed to cause any damage. So that's 1 Barbgaunt off the battlefield. Moving over to combat, the Carl made it in with ease with 9 inches, and then used his mass gauntlet to destroy both of those remaining Barbgaunts. He only hit with 2, but both of those were good enough to cause some damage, and the Barbgaunts failed their saves. And unlike the Termagants, these guys will not be coming back. It's looking great for the Leagues of Votann. So, checking the rules to see if it's more than 1 unit that we can bring on. It's only 1 unit, unfortunately, for the Termagants. We're going to bring those guys on at the beginning of their turn 3. It's not looking as bleak as it actually seems for the Tyranid player. They kind of have a secret up their sleeve. However, the first unit that's going to move is the one furthest up the flank, and they're also going to make an advance move for an additional 6 inches. The unit that's next to them is going to move forward 6 inches, but they're not going to advance as they would like to fire this round. Finally, the last unit are also going to move up, and they're also going to advance too, this time to the tune of just 3 inches. The only shooting that is going to be done by the Tyranids, those termagants fired at the warriors that are closest to them. They managed to hit with 3 out of their 4 shots. 2 of those also went through and caused wounds. And to my surprise, one of those wounds actually was a good one, as the save was failed, taking one of the Leagues of Votann off the board. The Nids are definitely in a lot better position than it first seems. At the beginning of the League's 3rd turn, it was when I realized that the Tyranids, or the Termagants, have a special rule called Skulking Horrors, where if a unit moves within 9 inches, they get a 6-inch move, meaning that these guys pretty much have to stay stationary at the moment, or those Termagants will be able to get closer to that objective marker. The Carl, on the other hand, he can move freely, so he's going to move up closer but stay in their deployment zone. So not wanting to move and set off that Skulking Horrors, the warriors are going to stay there, and they're all going to open fire on the unit of 3. They managed to hit with 2, but they only wound with 1, so that's just one of those termagants removed. It looks like it's down to the Hearth Guard. They're going to open fire with their disintegrators, so it's 9 shots, needing 3s followed by 3s, and the cursed dice strike once again as I rolled absolutely abysmally. So out of those 3 shots that hit, only 2 caused a wound, and 1 of those was saved, meaning it's just another termagant gone and removed from the board, leaving 1 left on the table. Those Exo Armour grenade launchers sure are looking pretty sweet right now, and they managed to fire off a nice 11 shots this time. The cursed dice are still among us, though, as we only managed to hit with 7, and out of those 7, only 4 wounded. They were good, though, and we managed to take out that last termagant for that 3 termagant unit. We still had the problem of that last 4-man termagant unit, so our brave warrior charged forward and got into combat in hopes to hold them in their next turn. Not only did he manage to hold them, he also managed to take 1 out, reducing them to a 3-man unit. However, that does leave 3 to pile in on him. Not really that worried, though. My dice rolls have been truly abysmal, and once again they strike. Only 1 of them managed to hit. He did cause a wound, but that wound was then promptly saved. Luck is definitely on my side, or the Leagues of Votann side at the moment, as it's definitely getting closer and closer to squeaky bum time for the Leagues of Votann. Once again, the termagants get placed back on the battlefield, and honestly, it's actually looking a lot better for the Tyranids than I first thought. In fact, I think they might be able to win this if things go their way in this turn. The top hand unit is basically just going to head straight past the Hearthguard, and they're going to roll for an advance roll for an extra 5 inches. Then the unit that spawned next to the Carl, they're going to completely ignore him, and they're going to head straight towards the Hearthguard in hopes of tying them up in the combat phase. Before combat, though, they're going to just dive straight in and open fire. However, the cursed dice are still with me. They only hit with 1 of their shots, and that one failed to penetrate any armor. Moving over to the charge phase, they rolled a 7, meaning they had plenty of room to get in and hopefully tie those Hearthguard up for the next turn. And we'll dive straight into combat. They get 5 attacks, and I managed to miss with every single attack. Things didn't fare much better for the Hearthguard either, as even though they've got 9 attacks, I only managed to hit with 2 of them. My dice really hate me. Out of those 2, both of them caused wounds and took out 2 of the termagants. Then moving over to the 3 versus 1 combat, the termagants all struck with gusto, managed to all hit. Only 2 of those actually caused any wounds, but they were good enough to go through, taking out that warrior, meaning that's another unit that's free to head towards objective marker 1 in their final turn. it's going to be pretty much impossible to stop the Tyranids at this point. At the beginning of the Leagues of Votann turn 4, they're definitely going to have to pull something special out of the bag. Thankfully, I've got a Carl that I completely forgot to use in that last turn, as my memory forgot to... I completely forgot he's in the top hand corner. So he's going to move forward and hope to take out one unit, and the Warriors are going to attempt to tie up the other unit. If that happens, I'm basically going to call the game there, as it'll be impossible for the Tyranids to win. So, starting with the shooting and with the disintegrator from the Carl. He needs 2s to hit, and he managed to hit with all 3 of his shots. And thankfully, somehow the gods were blessed upon me. The dice gods have changed. He managed to wound with all 3, taking out all 3 of those nids. Next up was the Warriors. They can't really move, or they'll trigger those nids to move. So they're going to stay there, take a couple of shots. Only 1 shot hit. It looks like they're going to have to charge in there, which they do so with a massive 11 inches, but they don't need all of that, of course. And starting with them, they get 1 attack each. They managed to hit with both. Only 1, however, turned into a wound, and that wound, though, was a good one, as it took out 1 of the termagants. So for the return attacks, they need 4s just like the Warriors. However, they also need 5s to actually cause any damage. They did hit with 2 of their attacks, but unfortunately they failed to cause any wounds. So that action has basically completely blocked the Tyranids from winning, so we're just going to finish off with the Hearthguard. They should be able to deal with these last 2 termagants, as they've got a honking great 9 attacks. They hit with 7 of them, 5 of those wounded. They don't get any saves from this, as it's -2 AP, so that's the last of those termagants removed. And as I said, there's no chance now for the Tyranids to actually win with those 2 Warriors blocking off that unit. It's been a very enjoyable game, I must admit. So, a victory for the Hearthguard and a victory for the Leagues of Votann. So, the final few pages of the magazine. The first one is the victory blurb for the game we've just played, and then we've got a lovely photograph of some absolutely awesome models. I really do like these vehicles that the Leagues of Votann have, and I definitely will pick one up in the future. Finally, the back page is a sneak peek of what we've got coming. We've got our Magus for the Genestealer Cults, because they'll be arriving very soon, and 2 paints in the way of Caliban Green and Wild Rider Red. It's been an absolutely amazing, brilliant 2 issues, this video. 2 of my favourite issues, to be honest. We've got some very bland stuff coming, though, in next video, which is a bit of a shame, but I've absolutely loved painting these guys. I hope you enjoy your stuff, too. If you've enjoyed this video, please give the channel a subscribe, the video a like, and tune in next week for the Magus and some paints. Not as exciting as this one, admittedly, but at least we're cracking on, and we've now got a brand new army in the way of the Genestealer Cult. Can't wait for that. Bye for now.